Well, good evening. Welcome to Yada Yahweh Radio. It's my pleasure to be with you. We've got Kirk and JB this evening. Hi, guys.
Good evening.
How's it going?
Good. We were able to record a program this morning on observations. It was unusual in that we did not intend to go where we ended up going. The intent of the program was to continue along and complete Chapter 9 of Observations for Our Time, but we didn't do that. And the reason we didn't do that is that we ran into a real surprise translating Chapter 11 of Yahowah, Isaiah. Remember back, I think it was the 14th or 15th chapter of Observations for Our Time. And we were translating Chapter 5 of Yahowah. And it began talking about this vineyard that Dod and Yahweh had worked together to plant with the choicest vines and the best possible fruit, and how mankind had managed to destroy the vineyard, to corrupt it. I think we have a unhappy child there in the background.
Yeah, Patty's getting her ready for bed.
Yeah, she doesn't think she wants to go to bed. If I'm guessing correctly, my granddaughter makes the same sounds when she is not pleased with the outcome of events. In that chapter, we ran into a neck, not N-E-C-K, but just N-E-C. It's the Hebrew word for sign, for banner, for standard bearer, for ensign. It's essentially a message that is hoisted high on an upright pole, that is positioned for the observant to see, conveying important information that they need to know to remain safe and free. So it's this neck that came up in conjunction with the life, work, and words of Dod. Just surprisingly, I guess, in Chapter 5 of Yahowah. And as we thought about the context and what it was saying about Dod, what it was saying about the negative influence of human religions and governments and militaries and the like, it was pretty obvious that God was talking about observations for our time, perhaps also Yada Yahweh and Questioning Paul and Prophet of Doom and an Introduction to God, all of those books and these shows. And it was really comfortable and exciting at the same time. Comfortable because in the midst of that chapter, which it's a chapter that almost no one even bothers to consider from Yahowah because they just don't, or not from Yahowah, from Isaiah. Yahowah, Isaiah. And the reason they don't consider it is, it begins talking about a vineyard. And I don't think they care much about the vineyard, and then it demeans the negative influence of religion and politics. And so it's not part of a oft-repeated prophecy. And it just came up out of the blue. And so for us, we looked at it as this is kind of like getting a gold star from your teacher, like you're in kindergarten. And the teacher says, hey, you did good on that one. They give you a gold star. And your mommy and daddy might notice that you got a gold star if you pointed out to them when you got home, but nobody else will. And so it was kind of a neat thing. And we celebrated the fact that, it appears that Yahweh knows what we're doing and is pleased with what we're doing and is actually going to use what we're doing. And we brought it up in this program and reveled in it in a bunch a little bit. And the reason it was so comfortable is that it was such an obscure reference. We didn't figure anybody else would get it. And in that way, we would avoid added acclaim, which brings criticism, which bites, and responsibility. It's fun doing this where you're translating Yahweh's Word, doing some research, analysis, writing some conclusions and commentary, and then sharing what we've learned. That's just fun.
Agreed.
Because what we are, in essence, is we're sitting there in the arena watching the events play out. Okay, it's the greatest drama that's ever been written. This is the play on life itself. It's the creation of the universe, the conception of life, and the Creator's desire of reconciling his relationship with fallen man. It's a great play to be in the audience and watching it. So we're there watching the play and writing about what we're seeing and what we're reading and what we heard and sharing what it means to us to be able to watch this play. But it's an entirely different thing to be cast in the play.
Yeah.
And when we move to
there's a lot more pressure there.
Yeah, enormous the difference. Now you're subject to having people write about you and say, the play was good, the script was really excellent, but that idiot that played the choter, what a numbskull. Well, the fact of the matter is that Yahshua 11, 6 chapters later, brings up the neck again, the sign and banner, which is lifted up by Yahowah. Not once this time, but 3 times. And then Yahshua 12 is short and sweet. It's about a celebration of Yah's return. But 13 returns to the conditions that exist immediately before his return. In the first line, the neck is there again, this time exposing and condemning Babylon. So that's more references to neck. It's getting hard to say, well, this is a gold star from the teacher that's so inconspicuous no one's going to notice it. And even more, that prophecy that we covered in Yahshua 9:6, unto us a son is given, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. And that may be as prominent, as well-known a prophecy as exists in all of Yahshua. And, of course, we analyzed it and came to realize it's not talking about Yahshua, therefore not the Christian Jesus, even if they got his name right. But we're speaking of Dode, and it's obvious. But that's a big-time prophecy. And maybe second to that, in all of the Torah prophets and Psalms, would be Yahshua's presentation of the Passover lamb, in Yahshua 53. But third might well be what emerges from the stem of Jesse, and Yahshua 11, because Christians will tell you that prophetic of the fact that that their Jesus would be a direct descendant of King David and be of David's line.
It permeates everything in Christian literature, yeah.
It reads everything. Yeah, so it's in the top 3 prophecies of all time. But this, my friends, is where the neck is presented 3 times, and this neck was written, this sign was written by a choter. And we're going to investigate to find out what in the heck a choter is. But, Kirk, we began this today in the program on observations, and there is a 0% possibility that Yahshua, the Christian Jesus Christ, is the choter.
That's right.
None. I mean, 0. And the possibility is like 1 in a billion that it could be Dode.
Yeah, it would be an insult to Dode if it was.
Oh, it'd be a terrible insult to Dode. It'd be a compliment for any one of us.
Sure.
A terrible insult to Dode. That's the difference in status.
Yeah.
So now the issue is, and we still as a family are wrestling with this. I've received, I think, response now from 5 people who have read the chapter who have shared their conclusions, and I've actually put them at the end of the chapter. But I do want more feedback before we distribute this chapter, because if we're right, then we have a tremendous responsibility, because Yahowah tells us specifically how he is using this neck, this sign, which is that it's a means for those Goyim who are honestly searching to find Yah's home. But more importantly, it is the sign, the banner that Yahowah is lifting to inform his children that he is here to protect them, that he is here to bring them from the 4 corners of the earth and bring them back to Israel, where he can take care of them. And third, it's being presented as a warning to the Gentile nations that this is important to God, and it is not in their best interest to try to interfere. So now, the Choder, no matter how insignificant, is a unnamed character in the play. And that's a far cry from really receiving a gold star from your teacher.
Yeah, that's
Yes. So what we're going to do here is we're going to jump ahead 10 chapters. We were in chapter 9 of Observations for Our Time. We were discussing the life and times of Noah and how his life applied to how we go about participating in the covenant. But now we're going to jump ahead to Observations for Our Time, chapter 19. It's entitled Spirit of Understanding. Now, typically when we talk about a chapter like this, the written text of that chapter is available for those who want to read along. And while we very seldom read from the chapter and almost always just read what Yahweh's statements are and then comment on what they mean to us, in this particular case, there is not a published public version of this chapter, and there isn't because I don't want to be wrong on this.
It's not complete.
I don't want to be wrong either way. I mean, I don't want to suggest that Observations for a Time represents the neck and that I'm the insignificant implement known as the Choder, if it's not true. And if it is true, I don't want to deny it because Yahweh is using it to call his children home. And the worst thing we could possibly do is to say, no, it's not us, and send people away. Because the only reason that Yahweh would mention it in this particular context is to infer to his children that he was part of developing it, that his Spirit helped inspire it, that they can trust it. We don't want to interfere with that
not at all.
if it's true. We don't want to discount that if true. Just as we don't want to take credit for something if it's not true.
Undeserved.
So, I wrote this chapter so that you know, the first time through, saying nothing about what was becoming increasingly obvious was a presentation that this Choder, and we're going to read the passage that it comes up in just a second, that this Choder, I realized 10 minutes after I started to translate the chapter, the Choder is not Dode, it's not Yosha. It's way too demeaning for either one of those two. And so, immediately, of course, I'm all ears trying to figure out who in the heck is the Choder. And then I realized, well, the Choder is relevant to me. It isn't relevant to anybody else. The Choder is an irrelevant implement. But the Choder writes on a banner that is very important to Yahowah. As you may question, I'm sure there'll be many who do, and say, oh, come on. Why in the world would Yahowah use some dumb goyim out there that is clueless, admittedly unqualified, and is a flawed implement? Because that's
just like Moshe.
Yeah, well, it's not typically goyim. It's just like Moshe. It's just like everybody that he used is a flawed implement.
I'm not sure he called Yasha Yah, did he? I mean, he said, if you want to, go ahead.
Even Yahweh shows that he's got flaws, because when Yahweh showed his great displeasure that no one was at the door, that he had invited humanity into his home and not a single person showed up, and he was so distraught with that, Yahweh said, "Oh my God, what have I done? I'm going to be removed from my job. I have disappointed God." I mean, so the fact is that Yahweh only uses flawed implements. And so if you're flawed, you could be typecast.
Got a shot at it.
In this play. Now, the difference, of course, Moshe is not only a named character He's a main character. Dode is not only a named character.
No.
He's a main character. Yahowah is not just an important character. He is a named character. The Towrah is not a named character. The Towrah is small potatoes. He's a little sprout, as it all goes. As a matter of fact, it's by demeaning Towrah possible. If we could not demean Towrah, I would continue with the way that I wrote the chapter originally, which was not to make the connection between observations in our time and the neck, the signal. Wrote it completely from beginning to end, no reference to it, and that's not my style. My whole style since I've begun this is to make connections, is to look at things that appear to be related, and to form an understanding by finding the common denominator. And here, I didn't want to go there. And then I had a lovely woman whom we've all come to know and love, Jackie. She, to a large degree, served as my conscience in this. And she wrote she edits every one of the books. Most of the chapters she's edited 3 or 4 times, sometimes even more. And I always beg her to say, add your comments, add your suggestions. You know this material really well. Don't just edit it. Make
really
suggestions.
Does.
Yeah, she really does know it really well.
Really does.
I mean, really, really well. And I'm sitting there. I'm entering the edits that she provided of Chapter 19, and there in green, she's got a paragraph. Oh, my. I'm reading the paragraph. And it says in a really nice way, I understand why you're doing this, but you're making a mistake here. And she said she is a very sweet lady. She did not say it and I want to make this clear. I read it as I think I should have read it, which is not how she wrote it. Which is, what's wrong with you? There's a reason that the neck is mentioned 3 times in this chapter and once in the previous chapter and again later. This is serious business. Yahweh is trying to reach out to his children. Most of them speak English. Most of them have been told not to read the Torah, prophets, and Psalms by their rabbis. Most of them are socialist, secular humanists and never given a thought about this. And they're about to be obliterated by mankind. And Yahweh is calling them home and trying to protect them. And what he wants them to know is that they can trust this sign that he is lifting up because he was part of inspiring it and of encouraging it. And, you may not want the notoriety, and I understand why you don't. But maybe this isn't your call. Now, she didn't write it that way. She's too nice to write it that way. But I read between the lines. That's what it said. And, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And so I went back and I rewrote the chapter. I spent a day and a half rewriting the chapter. And then I sent the rewrite out to you, Kirk, and you wrote me a 2-page letter.
Right. Well, I narrowed it down from a 6, but I decided, I'm not a writer. I'm a painter. I should just state it simply. So, but it's still,
and I included your letter at the end of the chapter now. And then my other conscience, the man that was responsible for many things we've done, including the writing of Questioning Paul, Dode, our Kiwi farmer from down under. He wrote me a letter on it. And so did several others. One even, our favorite Yehudim, Yehudi, Lisa, says, what's wrong with you? Of course, this is talking about what you're writing. There's nobody else doing this.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Stop it. I don't care that you don't want any credit. I don't care that you like anonymity. It's too late for that now. Man up. And she said it in a nicer way than that, but Not much nicer. That's not Lisa's style. She likes it. She likes
that actually sounds about like her exact words would have been.
That's pretty close. I'm not paraphrasing too much here. All right, so let's recover some of what we covered today, Kirk, and then build from there. Maybe. The chapter is 19 of Observations for Our Time. It's called The Spirit of Understanding. You'll understand why it's called The Spirit of Understanding in a moment. And the byline of this chapter is surprising. Woe to those who write Scripture. As we open the 11th chapter of Isaiah, we're confronted by a word which is only found 2 times in the whole of the Hebrew witness. It's choder. So as we seek to properly translate the opening statement and understand who or what it is predicting, we must determine whether it conveys some aspect of the symbolic imagery inherent in the Shemach branch. I don't know how many of you have read those chapters. I wrote 2 whole chapters on Shemach branch. I followed every reference to Shemach branch because I was trying to find out, is the Shemach branch Dod, because it's applied to him a lot, or is it Yosha, or is it both of them? In other words, is the tree of life, the trunk of the tree of life, Yahowah? Is the land in which it grows Yisrael? Are the roots which nourish it the Torah? And are the 2 limbs that come off tree Dod and Yosha? But Shemach is those are primary branches, man. That's as powerful and as important as you can get. A choder is a twig that comes off a secondary stem. So, but I wanted to know how close could we get to Shemach so this could be applied to either Dod or to Yosha, because Dod and Yosha are clearly Shemach.
Big branch.
And it's Shemach is T-S-E-M-A-C-H. Branch. Sprouting forth, delivering life, reaching out to the light. Holding up the leaves of that and the limbs of the tree. So we've witnessed that word in association with Dod and Yosha. In fact, it's so funny that Christians keep on referring to their Jesus as the Christ, which is a terrible translation of Maaseh Yah, which means the work of Yahweh, because Christ is based on Christos, which means drug. But you know how many times Masiach is presented as a title in the entirety of the Torah, Prophets, and Psalms?
0. Yeah?
Great big goose egg.
Great big goose egg. 0. The 2 times that it's mentioned in Daniel, the chapter that they derive it from, it's an adjective. It's not presented by the definite article. It's just an adjective, and it's modifying the kind of messenger that is going to arrive, one who is set apart and is prepared, devoted to the task, able to perform, filled with the Spirit. That's the use of Masiach, the 2 times that it appears. But branch, Shemach, all over the place. So it's amazing to me that people didn't pick up on it, but they didn't. But it applies to Dod and Yosha. There are no other branches. It's just Dod and Yosha, and they're, to a large degree, they're equal. They're Dod is the words, Yosha is the deeds. God talks the talk, walks the walk. Those are the 2 branches. Well, or choder, simply a stem, a sprout, a twig, and thus speaks of someone or something that's far less important. And since this is yet another verse, like the one that we considered in Yeshayahu 9:6 and 9:7, that Christians believe validates their faith, our quest to understand who the choder is far from pedantic. Now, we're going to return to the opening statement in a moment of Yeshayahu 11:1, which uses choder so that we can analyze every single word. That's our normal style. But I at least want to set up what the challenge is so that you know the particular statement from which we're going to try to deduce a proper definition of choder. So, quote, a blank. It's the And I've written, 10,
That's
15,000
the first time I sold that
pages.
one.
First time I've had a blank. So, I'm working really hard. That's it. And, by the time I wrote a blank, I'd already spent a day on Towrah, as much time as I could on Towrah. I had a pretty good idea what it was, but I figured it's really not fair to write the definition in prior to taking those who are reading along with me. Because that's the fun of the whole thing. So we're just going to begin a blank.
Well, in this case, it seems like it's almost being used as a title, so transliterating it would have been completely appropriate.
I think so. It is a title. It's not a very prestigious title, but it is a title. We talked today, would you rather be a big fish in a little pond or a really little fish in a great big pond? Well, a Towrah, in this case, is the tiniest little twig on the biggest tree in the universe, most important tree in the universe. So,
as long as I'm on that tree, I'm happy.
Oh yeah, man! I'd be just happy to be, a leaf.
A leaf.
A Towrah is actually a promotion. In my case, so a blank. The word is Towrah. A small shoot or secondary branch, a slender stick or twig, a tiny sprout or stem, a pliable wooden implement or rod as a measure or standard. A secondary source of growth serving as a living entity, delivering progeny, an unruly and untrained tendril, or a less productive sucker. Now, for those of you who aren't into horticulture, like I am, I love gardening. I'm quite familiar with an untrained, unruly tendril and less productive suckers. Now, you might say, why would you be? If you go out and prune your vines, if you go out and prune your trees to shape them up and to get rid of the kind of intertwined branches that grow up in the center of the tree rather than going out and up, and what you're going to do is you're going to prune or to really restrain, tie up, direct the trindle, which is usually the part of a vine that can produce fruit, but you really got to get it in line. You got to work with it some for it to be effective. Or a sucker, which is typically a limb that it's going to throw a few leaves up, but it's far better being cut off. So that's what those things are. So anyway, it says that a blank, Towrah, has come out or will be extended, Yatza, from the stump or rootstock, Giza, of Yishe. Yishe means to stand out and be noticed regarding the source of existence. A secondary branch or smaller limb, a netzer. Netzer is not a very proud word either. I mean, netzer is a huge step up from Towrah, mind you. But to give you the order of things, you got the trunk of the tree, that's Yahowah. You got the shamak, the branches, which is Dod and Yosha. You've got the netzer, which come off of those branches, which could be those like Shemuel, Yashayah, Noach, Yirmiyah. Those kind of people would be netzers. And then there's the choders, which is a twig off the branch, or a twig off the stem, off the branch, off the trunk of the tree. So a netzer, from his root, speaking of Yishay's root, which keeps him anchored and nourished, sheresh, continuing to bear an abundance of fruit, being productive while encouraging productivity in others, Torah. So, in English Bibles, it's a stem has come forth from the stump of Jesse, a branch from his root. And of course, there's a lot of things there that are just really weird. And that, why would it be a stump? It can't be, speaking of Dod, if it's a stump, because guess what? Yishay was Dod's father. He had not been cut down when Dod was conceived and born. So, can't be Dod. And you would never refer to Yahshua as a twig or stick. And so, they're just not thinking it through. But it says a stem of has come forth from or will come forth from the stump of Jesse. They changed Yeshe to Jesse. And of course, Yahshua describes who this Towrah is. The Towrah does something that religious people never want you to do. The Towrah does something that political people never want you to do. The Towrah does something that if you do in the military, you're in serious trouble. The Towrah stands out. The Towrah is noticed. And in Roman Catholicism for 1,000 years, they had a word for that: heretic. Yeah. And then they had a procedure for that: incarceration, torture, and humiliating death. Not a lot of people stand out and are noticed on important issues, particularly pertaining to God, and live to tell the tale. So he's from a stump of Yeshe, meaning to stand out and be noticed. A secondary branch or a smaller limb from his root, which keeps him anchored and nourished. Now, what does that mean? But maybe it's describing the Towrah again, or the work of the Towrah, continuing to bear an abundance of fruit. And this is important: being productive while encouraging productivity in others. Now, Kirk, I said there was no known verbal basis for Towrah this morning, and you corrected me and said, there's a possibility that Chadaf could be, it replaces the Rosh with the PH sound, and Chadaf means to catch or to seize. It's a stretch, but it's a possibility. And if that's true, then it would speak of this stem's capacity to stretch out and catch the light of the sun, seizing upon its energy. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but it's probably a stretch. Yeah. Most of the time, the verbal roots share the three-letter root of the word itself. Moreover, Towrah doesn't share a three-letter root with any other Hebrew word. And the lexicons is che, which means life. So it doesn't share a three-letter root. The word before it is the verb chadaf, the one that you found, Kirk, and the one after it is che, life.
Yeah, they too,
Yeah, we aren't going to use either one of our two primary techniques, actionable root or three-letter shared root. Fortunately, however, the other use of Towrah is found in a mashal, a proverb or word picture, composed by Dode. And since he was assuredly from Yeshe, and he used the word, it should be instructive. So therefore, before we complete and fill in the blank of our translation on Yahshua 11:1, let's jump back in time 300 years. That's how long ago Dode pre-existed Yahshua, and see how the ultimate wordsmith, and no better lyricist in human history than Dode, how he weaved Towrah into a lesson for God's children. This is what he wrote. And for you women out there, this is a good start. A wise woman builds her family home. A wise is from Chakmuth. The thinking and prudent, the most skillful and capable, the properly instructed and learned, from Chakam, to learn and then teach. Woman, this is from Isha, wife and mother. Isha is also the maternal fire and motherly light and feminine enlightenment that we read in conjunction with the four of the Mikra. Builds, Bana. She constructs and establishes. She restores and perpetuates the family name of her home and family. But the foolish and perverse, this is from Iwileth, the evil, unthinking woman who is averse to understanding and thoughtlessly quarrelsome, from Ewil, which is how we get the English word evil, foolish, defiantly ignorant, argumentative, and licentious. It's the basis, I say, of the English word evil. Tears it down with her own hands. She, harak, She breaks it apart, destroying it, ruining it, pulling it down, while pushing everyone out with her own hands. Now, we have all been taught to believe that there's nothing more important than motherly love. And I don't want to minimize the value of motherly love. But you'll note that according to God, when it comes to building a home, intelligence trumps emotion. Mm-hmm. Now, that should not be surprising because for both men and women, nothing matters more than being right. Mm-hmm. But that's really a profound thought, and it's so different than what we're indoctrinated to think. That intelligence is more important to building a home than a mother's love. He who walks, now we've just gone from the woman to the man. He who walks, he who travels through life, and what he knows to be right, straightforward and honest, respects and reveres Yahowah. But he who is devious and goes the wrong way along his own perverted and crooked path, he who departs from the way and is lost from view, he who has corrupted the way by creating his own twists and turns, disregards and despises him. Talked about this earlier today, Kirk, and it is really important for people to realize that in Christianity and Islam, Christians and Muslims are so into Allah and Jesus Christ that if you mention Yahowah, they get angry because they view Yahowah as a competitor to their Allah or Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And well, they should.
Yeah, well, they should, but they don't know why. And so they get angry. It's not just that they don't know Yahowah. They despise him. So those who have created their own twists and turns, who have corrupted the way, they actually despise God. I mean, it's counterintuitive, but the religious are so devoted to their mythical deity, they not only view Yahowah as a rival, they despise him. And if you cite the Torah, they hate that too. It's not just that religious people are led away from God. Most believers actually come to hate most everything associated with Yahowah. The religious prefer their way, no matter how twisted, to God's way.
I know it's true, but it's hard
Go ahead.
to understand.
Yeah.
It's hard to grasp that. I mean,
I've seen that firsthand with my wife and her couple of her sisters. It's just been nightmare in terms of the hatred they have because of it.
You know, almost every time that I bring up Yahowah and something that he said with somebody who's religious, it's 100% of the time what I experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, Patty had her sister literally grab a Bible out of her hand and throw it on the ground because she was citing it to her when they were arguing over what God's word said. She pulled it out to even using the King James to their book to show them where they were wrong. She got upset.
Yeah, it's
they don't want to have to consider the truth.
Yeah. So he who walks in what he knows to be right, straightforward and honest, respects and reveres Yahowah. But he who is devious and goes the wrong way along his own perverted and crooked path, he who has corrupted the way by creating his own twists and turns, disregards and despises him. In the mouth of the stupidly stubborn, he will, of the simpleton who is an idiot and fails to comprehend, of the defiantly ignorant and irrational who mocks the truth by promoting deceptions, of the argumentative, the unthinking citizenry who are averse to understanding, is an arrogant, self-exalting Yahowah, an overly proud, self-elevating, self-aggrandizing, yet sometimes majestic appearing, pliable implement, and unproductive sucker, a choder. But the lips, the language, of the learned and wise are observant and focused. So in this case, it's impossible to miss the fact that Dode was not using choder in a positive way.
Oh, no, that is definitely negative.
That is really negative. Now, he's not saying that sticks are all bad. He's not saying that twigs are all bad. He's not saying that wooden objects are all bad. What he's saying is, in the mouth of the stupidly stubborn is a arrogant and self-exalting choder, a pliable implement, an unproductive sucker.
Well, it just makes it a tool. That's basically
right.
what it is. A tool can be used for good or evil.
That is exactly right.
A hammer can build a house or it can kill a person.
Therefore, for Yahweh in Yeshaya 11:1, to use choder as a positive implement to write on his neck sign, and for Dode to use choder as a negative implement of an unproductive sucker and pliable implement that is being twisted and deployed by the stupid and arrogant, we know now for certain that a choder is a tool. It's an implement. And an implement isn't necessarily good nor bad. All depends on who's using it and what they're using it to achieve. From Dode's perspective, in composing this mashal, this particular choder was being used in a bad way, or perhaps more accurately, could at times manifest negative characteristics. As a thin twig, it would be susceptible to bending rather than being dependable and steadfast. As a skinny stem, it would be blown around in the wind. As a less productive sucker, it would be a source of wild growth, incapable of bearing fruit. As a small stick or thin rod, it might set a different standard or serve as a short-lived implement of control, which would be prone to breaking. Then, as a pliable implement or unruly and untrained tendril, this individual words would convey man's notions and be subject to what he has described as evil influences. In this case, especially as we consider the emergence of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all three religions tried unsuccessfully to graft themselves into Yahweh's tree of lives. Such is the history of religion. Satan and his clerical associates seldom, if ever, plant their own damn trees. In this case, that choder was something that they were trying to graft on and to give it the appearance of credibility, just as is the case with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Mm-hmm. For example, a choder in the company of a pope or a president, a minister or military officer is a counterproductive implement. But a choder wielded by Yahweh can be useful. A choder might even be Yah's pencil, a stick smearing graphite smudges on paper, which in the right hand conveys a valuable message. Dode wasn't perfect, far from it. But I cannot fathom Yeshaya using choder to describe him. After all, he has just written about Dode's vineyard in Yeshaya 5, and that he worked that vineyard with Yahweh. And then his kingdom in Yeshaya 9, where it's being reestablished by God himself. And so he's not going to refer to Dode as a choder. It just doesn't fit.
Well,
especially
you look at how often he's been referred to as a branch, and a choder is an offshoot of a branch. So it would be something that came from him, maybe, but not him.
Right. Correct. Could come from him. Absolutely. Can't be him. Especially following Dode's rather derogatory use of choder in the Mashal proverb. He would have read this. This existed 300 years before Dode was called, or Yeshaya was called to be a prophet. And even if you were to concur with what seems to be the implication that I've accepted, based upon what we're reading, especially in Yeshaya, that Dode is even more important than Yahusha, it is unreasonable to think that Yahweh would inspire anyone to refer to the perfect Passover lamb as a choder. That ain't happening.
Unthinkable.
Yeah, it's unthinkable. Therefore, as the word implies, apart from its source, apart from how it's used and who is deploying it, the choder is little more than a pliable implement, an otherwise irrelevant sprout compared to the mighty branches of Dode and Yosha. When we consider Dode's derogatory use of choder in the context of what we read about, you remember the Assyrian? We went over some of that material in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
That was covered in the previous chapter of Yeshaya. The natural inclination would be to see the Galoth, the majestic and yet arrogant, self-aggrandizing and self-elevating choder, who is stupidly stubborn, as one of the implements of oppression we saw associated with the adversary, the Assyrian. Since it is shown lifting itself up, it is akin to the thin plank of wood Satan deployed as an economic club, the rod of compliance, the scepter of government control, the staff of religious subjugation, or the lance of military oppression. In the wrong hands, a tool can yield disastrous results. And should this be too great an extrapolation, if you'll excuse the pun, if I'm out on a limb on this, then at the very least we ought to acknowledge that it is possible that there is a connection between the self-elevating stick and the plank of wood, which Yahweh referred to in Yeshaya chapter 10, when depicting the adversary as an implement. Dode may well have been addressing an insignificant twig which reckoned himself to be a mighty tree. You know, that one of the two meanings of Allah in Hebrew is mighty tree. Yeah, it's mighty tree.
Right.
Yeah, just recognize that. But before we break every choder, condemning them all by association, keep in mind that choder is just an implement. It's just a tool. It can be used to build a home or to construct a mosque. Likewise, a stem can bear good fruit or bad fruit, depending on the tree. In this case, the choder appears to be an unnamed twig in the world's greatest tree. He is a tiny stem, but grafted into the tree of lives. Yahweh is the trunk, Yisrael is the soil, the Torah is its root structure, and Dode and Yosha are its foremost branches. This choder is just a small stem off of a secondary branch, high up on the tree, supporting a few leaves, all seeking to absorb the light. Coalescing what we've learned, therefore, a choder is a small stem, a pliable implement, an insignificant sprout, an untrained trendle, which emerges from a stump and the root of Yeshe. It is thereby productive, contributing to what Yahweh is trying to achieve by conveying some aspect of the life he is offering. Now, just because the choder of the Mashal word pictures, Proverbs 14, was found in the mouths of evil, self-aggrandizing individuals, it does not mean that every stem, implement, sprout, or tendril is counterproductive. After all, in the case of the Assyrian, while he is a malak, most spiritual implements are effective. Now, if we were to dig a bit deeper into the Hebrew lexicon, while it is a far more encompassing term, the primary word for rod, if that's the direction we want to go, Yahweh would have written that as Shabbat. It is from a root meaning to branch off. And while a rod can be used as a means to control people by beating them into compliance, it is sometimes used as a measure or a standard. In such cases, Dode becomes the standard next to whom our lives can be measured. You know, that's what the beautiful thing about Dode. Dode wasn't perfect. We can follow Dode's example. We can be like Dode.
You can be right.
There's nothing that's stopping us from being like Dode. You know, Dode's greatest contribution was studying.
I don't think my intellect is quite there, but
no.
No, we're not sitting there on the throne of Yisrael with our home on Mount Moriah, and we're not as bright, and we're not receiving daily direct communications from Yahweh. But you know, we have a lot of advantages.
Every time I open the Torah.
Well, I do too. That's what I was going to say. But we have some advantages that Dode didn't have. Well, he also had a copy of the Torah.
We have Dode.
We have Dode. And Dode helps to explain the Torah. And, you know, Dode only could look at history past. That was 3,000 years ago, and the history future that Yahweh chose to show him, all of which he revealed to us. So we know both histories that Dode knew, but boy, do we have a lot more intervening history.
Yeah.
And a lot of scientific explanations that help us go beyond in some places where Dode went. And we can, I don't want to minimize this, we can be God's beloved son. We are God's beloved son. And we can study his Torah and we can write about it and share what it means to us, just as Dode did. Considering where we have been and where we're going, with all the attention which has been drawn to Dode and the fuss that has been made over the Assyrian, especially the repetitive use of Shemach to denote the branch's affinity with the vibrant growth we experience in the covenant, I'm inclined to render Towrah a bit more modestly in the opening statement of Yeshaya 11. And while it was used negatively in the Mashal, as we have discussed, a stick is nothing more than a crude implement. A stem is but a conduit of life. They are neither good nor bad by themselves, but instead are either useful or counterproductive, depending on who is wielding them or based upon which tree they are connected. Now, one last thought on Towrah before we return to the passage that we've been seeking to render accurately. It is very important that we appreciate that the Towrah is unnamed and that he is irrelevant apart from what he will write on the neck sign that Yahweh will use to call his family home. Said another way, it's the words written on the banner which matter, not the type of pencil that was used to scribe them. So now as we return to Yeshaya, Isaiah, let's apply what we've learned regarding Towrah. A small stem, a Towrah. A slit or shoot or secondary branch, a tiny twig or shoot, a tertiary sprout, a pliable wooden implement or rod as a measure or standard, a secondary source of growth, serving as a living entity delivering progeny, an unruly or untrained tendril, and less productive sucker, has come out or will be brought forth and extended from the stump, the giza. The giza is the rootstock. It is the genealogical source or the trunk which has been cut down and yet is capable of sprouting new growth. Now, it's important to recognize that stems really don't come out of trunks. Shoots do.
Yeah.
Branches don't come out of trunks. You'll find the kind of tendrils that we're talking about. But if you ever cut a trunk down and the roots are still alive and the tree tries to put out some new life, the stuff that comes up with it, is like a bush.
Yeah, I've had that more than once.
Yeah, so have we all. But it's important to know that that's the implication here. From Yeshai, as a secondary branch, a netzer, a shoot or sprout, is a small limb which extends from a larger one, a primary branch, from netzar, to observe and be preserved. From his root, sheresh, anchored and nourished, permanent and firm, continuing to bear an abundance of fruit, consistently being productive and fruitful, while causing and enabling productivity and fruitfulness in others. Now, this begins the same way that Yeshaya 9:6 began, using the perfect conjugation. And I say, okay, why go there? Well, it says that this small stem either has come out or will be brought forth. And that was written in the perfect conjugation. That's describing a literal and completed action, which is limited in time. Now, Dode came out, lived, and has passed away. But, you got to be really careful with Dode. Dode's throne and Dode's kingdom are being reestablished. So I don't think Yahweh is going to refer to Dode and anything of Dode as being truncated in time.
Mm-hmm.
And with Yosha, there's a zero chance that a verb depicting Yosha's role is as
perfect.
the human manifestation.
Everything related to him is going to be in the imperfect.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is written in the perfect. Now, perfect doesn't mean the person is perfect. Doesn't mean the neck that the person is going to write is perfect. It just means
completed.
Yeah, completed. That means that the sign that the neck is going to write is going to have a limited purpose for a limited time. That's what it means. After Yahweh returns, the sign is useless.
Oh, yeah.
And the sign hasn't always been there.
Yeah.
It had a beginning. It will have an end. That's what it means. So, it is recognizing that the future of this role is short-lived. The person unquestionably represents the life which grew out of Yeshe in some way. It could be that Yeshe was his father, not likely, as was the case with Dod, or that he was a direct descendant of Yeshe at a later time, such as Solomon or Yahusha. But none of these, or I should say but of these, only Solomon can be considered a sprout. And even that seems implausible, because Solomon's kingdom was epic. Solomon lived life on a grand scale. I'm not a fan of Solomon, but I would never call him a sprout. I mean, I like Solomon, and Yahweh knew him personally. I've read what he's written. I'm not impressed. I have no interest in ever meeting him. If I run into him, great. If I don't, it's nothing lost. His dad,
definitely not in your top 10 list of people.
Yeah, I am your father, Dad, and the father's father. Yeah, they're on. They are 1 and 2 on my list. So this leaves us searching for other possibilities, looking for someone who will stand out and step forward, based upon Yahshei's name, becoming noticed for rooting himself in the source of life, which has come from the trunk of Yeshai. Now, should we ignore the demotion from branch to shoot, the most obvious choice, Dod, is routinely depicted as the son of Yeshai, Jesse. Albeit every time he's referred to like that, it's always by his rival, King Saul. Yeah, so that probably doesn't count. And clearly, Dod was productive in that he was Yosha's most fruitful witness. But then again, there's no missing the fact that Dod is unquestionably more Shamak than Choder. And Dod was born before his father Yeshai was cut down, and thus would not have referred to him as a stump, especially in relationship to his son. So we ought not miss the fact that should this somehow be Dod or Yosha or someone far less important, the father's name, Yeshai, is indicative of how we should interact with our Heavenly Father. Dod and Yosha stand out as those who stood up, being noticed for drawing attention to the source of existence, to Yahweh, enriching all of us. Based upon the name, every covenant member is from the trunk of Yeshai.
Good.
Now, Christians are wont to deny it, but ethnicity matters to Yahweh. Yehudim takes precedence over, or Yahudah takes precedence over Yisrael. And after Yisrael, well, little else matters. Yosha's roots run through this stump. That is not to say, however, that a stem or tendril cannot be grafted into the vine, which is Yisrael, because this is indeed what is inferred when we were adopted into the covenant.
Mm-hmm.
We cease to be Goy or Goyim when we become members of the covenant. We become Yisrael. We have already examined everything that can be known about Choder, and based upon our investigation, it's a small stem, an insignificant sprout, a tiny twig, although it could be called a pliable implement fashioned out of something that was once alive. And at the very most, a Choder is a small shoot, a secondary branch, or a slender stick. and represents a secondary source of life, serving as a living entity capable of being productive and delivering progeny. Most negatively, a choder is an unruly and untrained tendril and less productive sucker. But one thing becomes obvious. A choder is not the same size or importance as a shamak, which is a substantial and primary branch which comes off the main trunk of the tree. Further, you will not find branches on stumps of trees which have been cut down. Mm-hmm. Only small shoots or tertiary twigs. This realization has the effect of directing our attention away from dode to a significant degree, while excluding Yosha from consideration altogether. Now, this perspective is further underscored by Netzer. Netzer is a secondary branch. It's a smaller limb which extends from a larger and primary branch. Similar to choder, it is a shoot or sprout. And while this is also more comfortable describing dode than Yosha, it's too small and insignificant for either. The root of Netzer, Natsar, means to observe and to be preserved. It's one of those marvelous words. We spent a whole program really talking about Netzar a long time ago. It comes up a lot of times in translation. It's a fairly common Hebrew word. And Netzar is a perfect blend of observation leading to salvation. Mm-hmm. Now, we are preserved by observing Dode's words and Yosha's deeds. Mm-hmm. Yes, now I am aware that we have beaten this poor choder to a pulp. But it was necessary. This is a profoundly important prophetic announcement. And in this case, it is the message, not the messenger, which matters. Read the words on the sign and follow them home. Consider the importance of the one lifting it up while ignoring the untrained implement who scribed the words on the banner he is holding. That is the purpose of our investigation of choder. There are several additional clues beyond roots, stumps, sprouts, and twigs which could direct our investigation toward a lesser implement, an untrained tendril, who is branched out from that which would come from Yeshua, standing up for the source of existence, standing out and becoming noticed. First, in a moment, Yahweh is going to credit the set-apart spirit for her contribution, describing the 7 ways, that number again, that she will transform this otherwise insignificant twig, an untrained tendril, into a banner worthy of consideration. Second, and speaking of this banner, Yahweh will refer to it 3 additional times over the course of this chapter, revealing its place and purpose within his plan and promise. It would seem that God is indicating that there is a connection between this smaller branch, indeed twig, and the neck banner that he intends to lift up for all the world to see. And third, we're told that this sign will be shown during the period Yahweh is calling a remnant of his children home. It will be used as a means to inform Israelites and Yahudim that he is offering to rescue them. So by predicting it here in Yashayah, God is enhancing the credibility of the neck, letting his children know that they can trust what is written on it. He is not only saying that it is rooted in the life and words of his beloved son, Dode, but also that he is the force behind it, letting those who read it know that they can rely on its message. At the same time, Yashayah reveals that this banner is designed to put Gentile nations on notice, explaining exactly what God is doing so they do not interfere and so that they are left without excuse. But also, my friends, it serves as a sign pointing those on to Zion for other Gentiles and for those who are diligently seeking to know Yahweh. In their case, those who observe it, even Goyim, will follow it home. In this regard, I find it amusing that the world only seems to notice that Dowd slew a giant with a slingshot. And he missed the point of his life, which is to exemplify the bereth and explain the Torah. But I suppose it's better than the world's universal misconceptions regarding Jesus, the caricatures that they have molded around him, casting him into the character of Dionysus. Therefore, perhaps this is yet another role that is played by the neck, the standard bearer, helping those who are open and interested better understand and appreciate what these mighty branches, Dowd and Yosha, actually said and did on our behalf. Now, whether this is directing our attention to Dowd, unlikely, to Yosha, highly improbable, to the legacy of Yahowah, perhaps, or to a vastly less important implement deployed to write the words on the sign, likely. Unless we know the words of Dowd, understand the deeds of Yosha, and appreciate the purpose of Yahowah, the identity of the Chodar, does not matter. Now, before we transition to Yeshaya 11:2, I shared this a week ago, and I want to rephrase it. I want to scream. I want to point my finger. I want to pound the table. I want to get mad for a moment. I think it's deserved. How in the hell is it that Christians have become so stupid? You know, they lug around a variation of a book that they claim is the inspired and inerrant Word of God, and yet they completely reject almost everything in it, including what it actually conveyed, and the prophecies they believe pertain to their religion. You know, for example, if Isaiah 9:6 served as validation of Christianity, 9:7 destroys it. Dowd proves that Paul lied. And now here in Isaiah 11:1, even though it is a Christian favorite, once again the next verse, Isaiah 11:2, undermines everything Christians believe. So the only way to cite the opening line as a validation of the religion is to ignore everything which follows it.
Well, that's why they're loved their chapter and verses. I can cite something completely out of context, and it sounds intelligent.
That is correct.
Oh, Isaiah 11:1 says blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, 9:6.
Therefore, I'm right.
Don't you dare read 11:2 or 9:7.
How many people cite what is it in Exodus? I am who I am. Oh, see, He doesn't say his name is Yahweh, therefore we don't need to call him Yahweh. Well, what's the next verse say? I am Yahweh.
But you can tell the children of Israel that my name is Yahweh, and that's the only name that I want to be known and remembered by.
Forever.
But they won't say
that.
But
they can quote that one verse out of context and justify their position.
Yeah. You know, they'll say that Jesus came to fulfill the Torah. Well, what does he say? He says, don't think that I came to annul the Torah or change a single word, not a single letter or a stroke of a single letter is going to change so long as the heaven and earth exists. So how in hell can fulfill mean to do away with in the context of what he said? Unless you just don't read it. You know, they hold up their John 3:16, and they don't realize that John 3 from verse 1 through 16 and beyond is a single discussion with a Pharisee, where Jesus says, what in the hell is wrong with you? Why are you asking me these questions about how one would enter the kingdom of God? Aren't you a teacher of the Torah? What does the Torah say?
I actually remember the last time I ever went into a church, and this was probably 12, 13 years ago. I actually kept a tally. Literally, the pastor only quoted 3 verses, and they weren't even 3 subsequent verses. They were 3 completely isolated verses. No context was given, no explanation given. It was just, this is what I'm talking about. Here are 3 verses that support what I am saying, spoken completely out of context to justify a position.
Yeah, it's like Paul without the 3 citations. The pastor says, I'm going to use these 3 citations only because I want to tell you what I want to tell you.
I didn't keep track of the time, but I'd be willing to bet most of the citations they cited were Paul.
Yeah, Paul just said, but I say. He never bothered with the three citations. That's funny.
So, I can take anything out of context. I can scour all of your books and find 3 passages completely out of context from everything there and go, see, this is why Craig says you should be a Christian.
Yeah, that's right.
If I take it out of context, I can make any argument.
Oh, of course. That's why, I told you that it was in Proverbs Mashal 14. And it was in verse 3. Did we go to the second line of verse 3 and just quote it? Or do we present the whole thing in context up to that point? That's exactly right. If you don't present things in context, you have no way of understanding. Context is the mother's milk of understanding. Always has been. Why did I write Prophet of Doom the way I did? Because the Quran has no context and no chronology. It is a jumbled mess. If you want to understand the Quran, the only way to do so is to rearrange it chronologically and set it into the context of Muhammad's life, and that can only be done by using the 2 biographical historical portraits of Muhammad's words and deeds.
The thing I'm working on right now, the verse I was interested in was Yirmiyah 9:23. You know where I had to start to get to the beginning of the conversation so I could examine that in context?
Yeah. 9:1.
9:1.
8:20.
Oh, yeah. A lot of times I find
I had to go back even further because, the chapter came in like in the middle of this entire conversation. I had to go back all the way to 8:20 to begin the context for it.
Yeah. If,
That's
for example,
how these chapters and verses are so out of whack.
They are so out of whack. Yeah. I ended up having to repeat all of Yahshua 11 to be able to present Yahshua 12. Because otherwise you haven't got a clue what's happening, when it's happening, why it's happening, who is saying what to whom, if you don't read it in context. Well, let me explain my point here. First, the Spirit is neither holy nor is she independent, and thus cannot be the third person of the Christian Trinity. She is the Spirit of Yahweh. She is presented as the Spirit of Yahweh. As the Spirit of Yahweh, she is not part of a Trinity. That's a fatal blow to Christianity.
Yeah.
Second, the Spirit of Yahweh, it's Yahweh providing the aptitudes.
It's just how he did it.
Yeah. Not Jesus. And not 1 in a million Christians knows or uses Yahweh's name. The fatal blow. Third, the Spirit of Yahweh is facilitating 6 aptitudes, attributes, or attitudes. Now, 7 things on the list, but the first of them just says it's enduring. So the Spirit of Yahweh is facilitating 6 aptitudes, attributes, or attitudes, and not one of them. Among the 6, you will not find any reference to religion, faith, belief, worship, prayer, bowing, praise, devotion, salvation, redemption, baptism, grace, gospel, charity, compassion, confession, sacraments, donations, a good heart, good deeds, a New Testament, the Son of God, death on a cross, resurrection, Christmas, Easter, Sunday, or a church. Not a single benefit Yahweh is providing fits within the framework of the religion. They all point in an entirely different direction, toward knowing and understanding Yahweh, toward following his guidance and being empowered by him. This, in turn, leads to respecting Yahweh, not Jesus, not a church, not a gospel of grace, nor religion.
Wow.
There is no common ground between what Yahweh is offering and what Christianity professes. And that means a person has to either be ignorant of what God is offering or irrational, and thus unable to make the kinds of comparisons which lead to understanding, or both, to be a Christian. If your faith is predicated on remaining ignorant and or irrational, your beliefs are worthless.
And you're an idiot.
You're an idiot. Worse, only a fool would carry around a book that universally disproves what they believe. Just think about how ill-advised a person has to be to say that their Bible is the inerrant Word of God and then disagree with almost everything stated therein.
But Paul said.
Think about that.
Contradicting God and himself. I will conclude my rant with this equation. Christian equals unthinking. And that is why Yahweh is equipping us to be the opposite of ignorant and thus the antithesis of religious. God equips his children with the spirit of understanding. This is what transforms an untrained tendril into a useful messenger, a simple stick into a notable banner. Now, before we read Yeshaya 11:2, some may be questioning, why would I tee off and tear apart Christianity if, in fact, the primary purpose of this neck is to call Yehudim and Yisrael home?
You have to.
There are a number of reasons. First of all, that's not the only reason. That Yahweh set up three separate reasons that three separate ways and benefits of this sign that he's going to lift up. The first of those was that for Goyim that are seeking, it's going to direct them home. They're going to be the first beneficiaries. Second, for Yisrael and Yahudah that are receptive and observant of Yahweh, it's going to be the sign that directs them home and tells them that Yahweh is trying to rescue them and that they really ought to take advantage of his offer. And third, it's being presented at a time that Yahweh is doing something that is wholly counter to what humans are doing. He's trying to enlarge and sustain Yisrael while the Gentile nations are trying to tear it apart, and God says, I'm putting you on notice. Don't get in my way. I don't want you to leave you with any excuse. It's all three of those reasons. And so it's important to condemn Christianity because it's the most popular religion. Mm-hmm. There's something else about it. I'm a Goyim, and as such, the first instinct that most Jews, even secular Jews, are going to have is they pick up a book written by a guy whose last name is clearly Irish. First name, by the way, is based on a Hebrew concept of crag. That's the thing that when Yahweh appeared to Moshe, he appeared in a crag, a sharp crevice of a rock, not a burning bush. But anyway, then they're going. Their first thing they're going to go to is Christian. This guy is going to be promoting Jesus, and oh, come on, I don't need that grief in my life. If you're going to reach Yisrael and Yahudah, and you're a goy, you darn better well. Important it is to discredit Christianity because they know it's a farce.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the target audience, it's essential that they know, that the author knows, that the scribbler on that sign knows that Christianity is a farce and is absolutely willing to tell them so. But also who knows, and they know, that Rabbinic Judaism is a farce. 80% of ethnic Jews are not religious. 80%.
Yeah, they're secular Jews by and large.
Yeah, and it's, right, it's Kirk, something you wrote today.
Agnostic is this, yeah.
80% of Jews worldwide speak, read, and write English. Far more Jews speak, read, and write English than Hebrew. If you're going to reach Yahweh's children, particularly those in diaspora, those he's trying to call home, you need to write to them in English. So there's a lot of reasons for these things. All right, this is a long statement. We'll dissect it here in a moment. I'm going to read the whole thing and just try to follow along the best you can, and then we'll dissect each of the segments of it. And the Spirit, the Ruach, the divine power and energy, the mind and essence, the feminine touch and understanding, the acceptance and light of Yahweh, settled and remained upon him. She will be placed on him. She will energize him, and will be quietly allied with him, never departing, while she enriches the association and assures a most favorable outcome for him, enabling him to be composed, a lot of you could laugh at that, and prevail no matter the challenge. Well, think about being composed for a moment. I know I said I wasn't going to interrupt this because I'm going to read right through it. I bet you between the radio shows that were between Shattering Myths and the 3,000 I did prior to Shattering Myths on national talk radio shows, now, I've probably done 5,000-6,000 radio shows.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those where callers could call in. And I don't recall a single time where I lost my composure. Now, that's a lot to ask.
Even when dealing with some fairly large idiots.
Ooh, extraordinary. So the Spirit
for someone who does not suffer fools well, you did very good.
No, yeah, I know. That was my biggest fear about doing any of that is I don't suffer fools well, particularly fools that are lying on behalf of Hasatan.
Yeah.
So the Spirit is what enables this individual to be composed and to prevail no matter the challenge. I want to tell you, if you're going to discredit the world's two most popular religions, 5 billion of the 7 billion people on the planet, you better have something going for you.
Yeah, better have some good friends.
Right. This was the perfect opinion, an actual completed act in the past or future. Then it lists the Spirit's attributes and contributions. The Spirit providing the ability to understand, the mental aptitude and wisdom, comprehension and technical expertise. From Chakam, the capacity to learn and the ability to teach. You know, we saw Chakam just a moment ago, didn't we? It was in the proverb. And the capacity of discerning reasonable insights so as to become enlightened. This is from my favorite Hebrew word. Well, maybe second favorite Hebrew word. My favorite Hebrew word is probably Yada. You know, to know, to appreciate, to acknowledge, to understand is Yada. But my second favorite Hebrew word is bien. In this case, it was written as bena.
Know and understand.
Yeah, which is to make that transition from knowing to understanding by being discerning. You referred to it as having a filter, Kirk, earlier today.
Yes.
You know, you need to be able to filter things out so that you can distinguish between that which can be trusted and that which should not be, between right and wrong, good and bad, truth and lies. You got to be able then to find the common denominators. The thing that frustrates me at no end with the media today. You know, you could have 99.9% of terrorists shouting Allahu Akbar and being fundamentalist Muslims, and they can't find the common denominator.
Yeah, what is the motivation here for this guy?
Jeez, we don't know what the motivation is.
Read
the Quran. Read the Hadith. Investigate Muhammad's life. So bien and bena is the ability to facilitate the propensity to be perceptive, making the proper connections along with intelligent associations, which lead to a conceptual understanding. It's from bien, to observe, consider, and distinguish, to discriminate, and thereby intelligently determine insights leading to understanding and enlightenment. That's the first two. The second two, the Spirit of practical advice and applicable counsel. You know, you read the book of Debatim, that's what it is. You know, it tells the story and the motion says, okay, I'm going to give you some practical advice based on what God just told him. Practical advice.
Well, it's also what I get from Dode.
That's exactly right. Dode's Mashal word pictures, the one we read, practical advice. His Mizmor Psalms.
Psalm 119.
Oh, boy. Pertinent directions regarding how to properly respond. That would be 19. And, you know, look at Psalm 91, Mizmor 91.
Yeah.
This is why you ought to take the risk of doing what Yahowah wants. Not only are you going to have a lot of fun, but he's going to take care of you.
Promised.
Yeah, promised. Delivering effective mentoring on how to deliberate relevant decisions. And the Spirit of empowerment. Gebura, of inspiring aptitude and enormous capability, of the capacity to achieve and accomplish the mission, of the courage, character, and confidence, with the ability to prevail and excel. And the last two, the Spirit of knowing and of knowledge, da'at, of recognizing where to look for answers, of being aware of the evidence and being able to discern what is relevant and accurate, of discriminating between fact and fiction, right and wrong, of using your filter to recognize and acknowledge the truth.
You were talking earlier about your favorite Hebrew words. That one's in my top 5. Yeah. My desktop background on all my computers is Hosea 4:6. It's kind of a constant reminder. But I love that idea. Knowing is one thing, understanding is another.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And,
but you can't understand without knowing.
Religious people know, but it's the lack of knowledge and understanding that leads to death.
No.
Yeah, dayat. It's a low dayat, a lack of knowledge and understanding.
It kind of combines the two.
That destroys us. But she is the spirit of knowing and knowledge of dayat. Mm-hmm. So as to respect and revere Yahweh. She isn't providing understanding on how to do a facelift. She isn't providing knowledge on how to fire an MR-16. She's providing knowledge and understanding and the ability to be discerning and empowerment and applicable counsel, which leads to respecting and revering Yahweh. Because that's what matters. That's what matters in life. Do you respect and revere Yahweh? And all of this is for that. And, it didn't say, so you believe in Yahweh?
No.
So you respect and revere him.
You're out.
You come to like him. Yahweh has earned our respect.
And respect and reverence has to do with knowing. Is there anyone you don't know? There's this idea that people respect the president. No, they don't.
No.
They don't
They
know
respect the office. No, I don't respect the office or the president.
They don't even respect the office, really. They're told they should,
right.
And they follow orders and they obey, but they don't know the president. They've never met him. They have no idea whether he's a good person or a bad person. They only know the public persona that he puts on, and they make a decision based on that. But
respect is something that's earned, and you cannot earn it unless the person knows him.
Exactly. You have to know them intimately.
Right, intimately, to be genuine.
I can't respect someone I just met today. I don't care what their job title is, how awesome they seem. I just met them. Until I get to know them, I don't have that respect for them.
Right. We've all worked together now for the last 10 to 15 years. We've earned one another's respect. Now, as we've come to expect with Yahweh, this pronouncement follows God's overriding pattern of creation, of life, of revelation, relationship, enrichment, empowerment, and enlightenment. Of 6, the number of man, a carbon-based, which has an atomic number of 6, life form, created on the 6th day, plus 1, God is 1, equals 7. 7, Shabbat in Hebrew, is the promise of a wonderful life together in the 7th dimension, beginning on the 7th day. The first statement regarding the Spirit stands alone, and it is followed by 3 sets of 2 declarations. He knows that his advice is empowering. He wants his children to grow up, be confident, and strong. He recognizes that the more we know, the more we will come to respect him. Indeed, love him. Now, we're at the part of the program that is not broadcasting, but is recording. And I think it's all right if we go a couple of more statements or pages beyond where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And then we'll pick it back up next week. Now, before we dissect this marvelous declaration, now, please note, Yahweh is unconditionally offering to provide these 7 benefits. The choder did not have to request them. He did not have to qualify for them. But instead, Yahweh expected him to capitalize upon them. Yahweh wants his children to endure forever, to be thoughtful and rational, to understand. He wants every covenant participant to freely share what they have learned, just as these capabilities were freely given to them. Now, there's so much here to contemplate, so much to learn, so much to understand. Let's search the announcements, full implications, by examining the declaration, one statement at a time. Now, the first was, the Spirit of Yahweh will settle and remain on him. Nuach al-Hu. She was placed on him. She energized him. She was quietly allied with him, not flashy, never departing while she enriches the association and ensures a most favorable outcome for him, enabling him to be composed and to prevail no matter the challenge. First and foremost, the operative agent and force in the choder's life is the Ruach Yahweh, the Spirit of Yahweh. Understanding this, accepting this, is paramount. And yet this profound truth eludes every Christian, Muslim, Hindu, socialist, secular, humanist, or religious Jew. Simply stated, if you don't know Yahweh, you've got nothing to do with His Spirit. Now, Nuach is a great word. Kirk, you probably already checked into Nuach. And Nuach is a an amalgamation of Ruach, the Hebrew word for spirit, and Noach. Noach, the trustworthy guide known as Noah, to a beautifully prepared and restful spiritual home. Therefore, we can turn to Noach to more fully appreciate the many reasons we have been told that the Spirit has or will provide Nuach on behalf of this man and his mission. Yeah, we're halfway home. Noah's life reveals that if we disassociate from religion, government, and societal customs, which is the first thing we're told about Noah.
First step to do, yeah.
If we listen to Yahweh, which is the second thing we were told about it. If we come to a correct understanding of who He is and what He is asking, that's the third thing we were told about Noah. If we come to trust and rely on Him, and if we walk through life with Him, which are the next things we were told about Noah, accepting and acting upon His instructions rather than changing them, which is the next thing we were told about Noah, we can ride the ark home. In our case, we're invited to journey through life and through time with Yahweh, accompanied by His Spirit, on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant.
Beautifully put, truly.
Nuach affirms that Yahweh's Spirit is allied with us, which is to say, she is connected with us, associated with us, engaged in a relationship with us, and she is actually related to us. She's our mother. She eternally endures with us, never leaving us when she settles restfully upon us. By placing her upon His children, Yahweh not only energizes us, rejuvenating, invigorating, uplifting, and strengthening us, the set-apart Spirit provides the family of God with a sense of calm composure, so we can retain our wits and never panic in the face of adversity. Nuach conveys that we're at peace with God, enabling us to be directly associated with Him through her. Yahweh's Ruach never abandons her sons and daughters, eternally enriching the association while assuring the most favorable outcome, enabling us to be composed and to prevail no matter the challenge. That would be enough all by itself.
I think of many examples where that's happened.
Absolutely.
Countless in all of our lives, all for the same reason. It wasn't to win the lottery. It wasn't to get the pretty girl to go out on a date with you. It wasn't because you needed to get a base hit. It wasn't because you needed to ace an interview. It only happens when you're doing the things that are important to God. You want His will for your life? Do what He wants. Pretty simple, isn't it?
Seems simple enough.
Every covenant member should be reassured to know that Nuach confirms that the Spirit remains and never departs. But in this particular case of preparing the choder, this insignificant implement, to accomplish a temporal mission, the verb was scribed in the call perfect, depicting an actual, completed act in the past or the future, which had been or would be limited in time. This means that she, Nuach is prefixed in the third person feminine singular, she, will come al-hu, upon this individual, for a specific purpose at a particular time. That is to say, this man was not born with the Spirit. The Spirit settled upon him to enable what follows in the list. Further, his mission is not eternal. This next sign is only going to be held up for a very limited period of time. Now, that's not to suggest that the Spirit's going to abandon him, but only that this prophecy pertains to an event which has a beginning and a conclusion in time. Or another way to look at the perfect conjugation in this regard. The nature of the spiritual association was complete, totally achieving the desired results during this period of time with this unique individual. Nuach is so similar linguistically to ruach. It's apparent that nuach, to be placed upon, settle on, and remain, discloses to some extent how the ruach spirit interacts with our soul. Also intriguing, as a completed act in the perfect conjugation, the implication is that the spirit nuach settled and remained upon this individual. Well, that's completely incompatible with the most important moment in Yosha's life. Now, someone says, oh, well, the Spirit of God settled upon him in the Jordan River. Yes.
Yes.
The Spirit of God departed and left him. Passover. So once again, this rhetoric seems to exclude Yosha and focus on either Dode's contribution to our ability to know and understand God, or that of someone who would mine his words and share them at an appropriate time. Now, there's a tendency among people unfamiliar with Yahweh and his testimony to confuse spirit and soul. I hear that a lot. Boy, you hear it all the time in the television or the paraphernalia you might pick up and read.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about the human spirit.
Interchangeable.
Yeah, the human spirit. No, I'm sorry. Humans don't have spirits. They'll say that the soul is immortal. No, it isn't. Soul is mortal. They just don't understand. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between soul and spirit. God is spirit. Humans have souls. A nephesh soul is the presence of life within every animal. It represents its consciousness. The soul is what differentiates animals from plants, giving them the capacity to observe and respond to their surroundings. Our identity is tied to our soul, as it is the purveyor of our personality and preferences, our proclivities and our memories, our desires and our experiences. The nephesh soul is who we are. And our nephesh is the only part of our nature capable of transcending our mortal existence. Our physical bodies, which degrade and are a liability, they are going to be discarded. Beyond soul and consciousness, nephesh means breath. It is not only something which comes from within each of us. We know that a person's soul has departed when they stop breathing. And that's important because unlike spirits which are immortal, souls are mortal. Most fade into oblivion, ceasing to exist upon an animal's demise, which means the same is true for humans. But that is not to suggest that a soul is a simple entity, the essence of life, the thing which animates the living. Nothing is more vital, and yet it has no mass, and its existence has never been detected. I can explain its purpose, but no one can describe its composition. Now, while Yahweh has a soul, unlike ours, his isn't essential to his nature. He could place it inside of Yosha, for example, without degrading his life or ability to perform, whereas parting with ours would have killed any one of us. With Yahweh, his nephesh was a means of installing his personality and preferences inside of Yosha, thereby enabling Yahweh to save us through him. Now, a ruach spirit is akin to energy, most especially light. It cannot be destroyed, although it can be contained in a black hole. Spirits never die. As energy, a spirit is vastly more powerful than any mortal being. And spirits, unlike souls, are not stuck in time. A spirit is capable of instantaneously transitioning through the 6 dimensions of our universe. Today I read that, wow, they found a sun with 8 planets around it. Isn't that great? Except it was 2,500 light years from Earth. Now that means that even if we could design a contraption to go half the speed of light, I don't think it's imaginable that we could go faster than that. I don't know if it's physically possible to go that fast. But if we were to design something that could go at half the speed of light, then it would take 5,000 years. Almost all of the history of written history of man to get there. It wouldn't survive the journey. And of course, 5,000 years to get back. So what? You got to understand the scale of these things, and yet a spirit of Ruach can cross it in the blink of an eye. Not just that, not just 2,500 light years away, billion light years in an instant.
Yeah, Roy always says it's like going through a curtain. They just turn around and there they are.
There they are. A physical being can't be in the 4th dimension, and no life is even possible in less than 3 dimensions. So there are a lot of restrictions in all of this, but a spiritual being can, in fact, migrate, maneuver through space and time. Now, a ruach, which is akin to energy, especially light, cannot be destroyed, but it can be contained in a black hole. And that's important because that's where spirits that have allied with Satan and those humans' souls which have allied with the adversary will spend their eternity. Now, beyond spirit, ruach can also mean wind. Like our breath, wind is tangible but invisible. The difference is that wind is an external force. So this comparison and contrast between breath and internal force germane to our nature, and wind, an external force which can act upon us, was designed to aid our understanding so that we might better distinguish the unique characteristics of soul and spirit. Animals, such as humans, all have breath, but none have wind, just as we possess a soul, but not a spirit. And yet, we can all be affected by the outside influence of wind, both negatively and positively, just as there are good and bad spiritual influences in our lives. Now, the Sabbath, the heavenly envoys and implements which have been referenced throughout Yahshua, they're all malach, spiritual messengers. These energy-based beings were created and programmed to serve God. They are considerably more complex and sophisticated than the most advanced robot running an optimized form of artificial intelligence. But that's the best comparison I can muster. The majority of malach perform as Yahweh instructs, with many of them dispatched to protect the covenant's children. However, a third of the heavenly host, as a result of a flaw in their programming, they became counterproductive. Satan is the leader of this cadre of evil spirits. The most important spiritual influence in our world is the Ruach Kodesh, or set-apart spirit. As this statement indicates, and her name implies, the Ruach Kodesh is set apart from Yahweh. That is to say, she represents an aspect of God's nature and power. She is decidedly feminine. Since she is the subject of the verb nuach, as I mentioned, it was prefixed in the third person, feminine, singular. The set-apart spirit can work independently or in harmony with a human soul. For example, Yosha became the son of God when the Spirit descended upon him in the Yarden River before the witness of Yahuwah. Dode was inspired to write his Mizmor Psalms as a direct result of the Spirit's influence in his life. The set-apart spirit is responsible for our spiritual birth, Mon Bekurim, firstborn children. She adorns the souls of covenant children in a garment of light, which removes all traces of darkness from our nature and makes us appear perfect in Yahweh's eyes. Beyond this, the set-apart Spirit provides comfort and counsel, enrichment and enlightenment behind Shabuah, the promise of 7. Therefore, whether this is prophetic an announcement highlighting what was in the sense of Dode, or what will be addressing Yosha, or spoke of some lesser implement along the way, the Ruach Kodesh was and continues to be the principal, but not exclusive source of essential, enabling, empowering, enriching, and enlightened attributes, aptitudes, and attitudes, which are delineated in this list. Now, Kirk, I'm sure you know there's a reason I said that she was not exclusive. God gave us something else. Gave every human born along the line of Adam and Chawah a nesama, a conscience,
and free will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, free will to to use the neshama in the auspices of free will. Now, a conscience is different than consciousness. A nephesh consciousness enables us to observe and respond to what we see, hear, smell, and touch. Our nesama provides the ability to understand what is happening and then contemplate the most rational response. When used effectively, the neshama is a powerful tool, enabling humans who exercise it and capitalize upon it to differentiate good and bad, right and wrong, truth and deception. It is the means Yahweh gave us to find Him. It's the compass which helps us navigate the Torah. When the nesama is used in conjunction with the set-apart Spirit to explore Yahweh's words, we're capable of great things. And indeed, achieving, developing every aptitude, every attribute and attitude on this list. She is the best way to explain how a normal individual such as myself can deduce extraordinary insights from Yahweh's Word and come to understand Him, appreciate what He is offering, and realize what He expects in return. Simply using the tool Yahweh provided as it was intended. Now, Kirk, that brings us to the second of these 7 statements. We're already well beyond our time. Do you think we should just delve into it next week?
Well, that's a good place to stop, probably. Social secularist humanism, that talks about that, what we were just speaking about, I don't understand how you can expect people to be non-judgmental in function. I mean, it never occurred to me that somebody would come up with that. I mean, in all my wildest dreams.
That's
I know that's the
amazing thing about social secular humanism.
Nobody challenges that. I mean, at all.
If you cease to be judgmental, you can't function. All you can do if you cease to be judgmental is just go along with the flow.
Yeah.
Society wants you to move over this way, you move over that way.
Well, that's
they don't want you to think,
philosophy.
You don't think.
You're just a wave in the ocean. Just go along.
You're waving the ocean. Yeah. Right. You're part of the tide.
Yeah.
If you cease to exercise good judgment. There is a difference between right and wrong. Political correctness is the art of promoting that which is untrue and completely obliterating any reference to that which is true. All to promote the agenda of socialist secular humanism.
Yeah.
It becomes a crime to talk about that which is true if it's in conflict with your agenda. It becomes worthy and enlightened to promote that which is false when it promotes their agenda.
And people buy that.
Yeah, and for the world to tolerate political correctness reveals that the vast preponderance of people have given up on exercising good judgment. They no longer have a filter. They're no longer discerning. They sure as hell aren't discriminating. Discrimination now is considered to be, the terrible word.
Dirty word, yeah.
Well, to discriminate is to think, is to know the difference between that which is true and that which is false, that which is right and that which is wrong. If you can't discriminate, you can't think. You can't be rational. You can't be just. You can't be civil.
And it's so obvious, but not.
It is so obvious.
Well, I can tell you,
it's like this whole thing on love trumps hate, and you say no. First of all, the lovers there are really haters.
Mm-hmm.
They hate anyone who gets in their way or disagrees with them, promotes any other agenda. They're really hateful, spiteful people. But beyond that, there are lots of things that deserve to be hated, and the fact that we don't hate Islam sufficiently is the reason why there's 40-some-odd million women that are sex slaves.
Yeah.
It's why Islam commits 99.9% of the world's terrorist acts. We don't hate it sufficiently. We need to know what to hate, why to hate it, when to hate, or animosity. Righteous indignation is a good thing.
Yeah.
Properly directed. In fact, you can't be compassionate and loving unless you know what to hate.
Yeah, you got to hate it, yeah.
You got to hate the rapist and the pedophile if you're going to love your son and daughter.
Right. Jeez. And we're just in a world that can't even get it.
We really are.
Every day. I just wonder y'all don't want to put up with this much longer.
Yeah, it's.
Now somebody's being backed into a corner as you read all this. It's Yahweh's not giving you a lot of wiggle room.
No, he isn't. No. If you're a Christian, if you're political, if you're patriotic, if you're pro-military, if you're a Muslim, a socialist, secular humanist, into Judaism, God's not giving you any room. He has pushed you into a corner. He has turned out the lights. He has closed the door.
Mm-hmm.
He's exposed and condemned everything that you have held dear. Oh, God's pretty intolerant. Now, he is tolerant in one respect. Now, he'll tolerate a lot of flaws in his children.
But he didn't look at him either. He got a trick on that one.
That's right. Yeah, he does.
I don't have to look at it. Just put bright lights on him. I can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
By the time he puts the Torah in your heart, then
who said this?
And your spirit, then you'll be light too. So that
put a trillion-ton megawatt light on it, and hey, no darkness anymore, man. That sucker is glowing.
Hey, glowing. You got a marvelous glow tonight. Yeah.
You do have a marvelous glow tonight.
For your interest, just for your interest,
yes.
Towrah.
Yes.
The letters. You got a chet, which means protect, separate, like Kodesh, just a tent wall. It can be a fence. You can separate things towards good things. You can separate things away, protect them. The tet, it is a mark, of course, too. You can use it like a fiduciary mark, with a circle with an X.
It's also a signature.
It also it surrounds it, encloses. Mm-hmm. You store valuables in a basket. It's also sometimes you refer to as a basket, but certainly for holding things. And then you have the rosh, which is the top head, best, first, and observant, or observer. So we don't have much on Towrah. I went through again.
That needs to be added to the chapter, doesn't it?
Well, at least it certainly fits.
Yeah. The only thing that I don't like about it, it presents the Towrah in a good light.
Well, it doesn't have to. I mean, it can hold.
That's true. Cause
you can separate people. You can separate to the evil side. You can surround people, fence them in.
Yeah.
And
not
clearly
the rosh is looking away, not towards.
Right.
Yeah, because the rosh is the last letter, be facing to the left, so it's looking away from the other two. But neither of the other two are Yahweh letters.
Oh, Yahweh, so it's a neutral.
Yeah, so it's neutral.
Sense.
Yeah, it's neutral. Looking away from a yod, hey, or a wah is negative. Looking towards or leaning towards any letter that leans towards, because a lot of the Hebrew letters have an orientation. I think it's 8, 9, 10 of them that have an orientation.
Yeah, something like that.
If the letters with an orientation, if the orientation is towards a letter in Yahweh's name, it's good. If it's away from an orientation in Yahweh's name, it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And with Towrah, the two letters, the fence and the enclosed
basket
and signature, are neither in Yahweh's name, which means that it's neutral.
Mm-hmm. But it has some help, depending on how you look at it. It won't solve all your problems, but it certainly is interesting. It's like a lot of these words in that first chapter, 11:1, is they have some rather deep meanings that would imply once you go to this is what the choder is doing, and then you look at all the different things. It was quite.
Send it to me. Write it down on your sheet and
pop it in.
Copy and send it to me. I'm only playing airplane pilot, delivering my wife and son here from various cities tomorrow, but I'll be back at it tomorrow afternoon, and I'll. It might sound strange. You know why I was saying this, that I don't like anything that presents choder in a good light. Because even though I think I am the choder of this particular passage, it's so much easier just knowing your role, as a dented, flawed implement in good hands.
But these are some of your attributes and some of your goals. Are the goals of the goals of Yahowah?
Yeah, they are.
Protect us, separate us, and to
be observant and. To look with your eyes, to listen with your ears, to think with your mind, and to use what you learn to separate and protect based upon the enclosing nature and signature of Yahweh. Yeah, I think that's what Yahweh values.
So it has a little something.
Yep, send that to me. I'm afraid that, as I said, we beat the poor choder to a pulp.
We did. But,
yeah, we did. But there's a reason for
that.
This is a really important prophecy, and the choder is a really irrelevant implement.
Yeah.
But the choder, it's God, and this 11:2 has to explain how this irrelevant implement was used to create something very important. That's why you see the Spirit making these contributions.
Yeah. I think it's quite amazing when you think here's a little insignificant thing, and all this attention is being paid to it.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. Y'all got a big focus on this.
Yeah, big focus. Cool. Yeah, big focus. There's an entire chapter of the single most important prophet, and this is the second, third, and fourth of what we already know is 5 mentions of this neck, of this sign that this choder has scribbled on. That's a big deal.
That's pretty cool.
The choder's not, but the sign is.
Yeah, but that's all right. That's what you said.
So God is saying, okay, so you're right, it is insignificant. But look what I can do with it.
Look what I can do with this tool.
Look
terrific.
What I can do with it. Yeah. That's exactly what it's saying.
Yeah.
So, and you just don't want to get egotistical like the Assyrian.
No,
wait a minute.
Look what he can do with it.
You're just an implement. Be careful now. You are just an implement.
I'll hit all the
Now the difference is that Yahweh loves his children. So you don't want to demean the implement too much.
No, he wants to lift you. If he's going to lift you up, I mean, let you play with it.
Yahweh is really devoted
I don't mean
to his implement. So we have to be careful on it. To some extent. So it's walking that narrow path.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Personally, I think this is. I'm becoming more comfortable with this because I think we're having fun with it.
Did you get anything negative from anybody that called? Anybody that wrote?
No.
I didn't think you would. I'd be shocked if you did.
No, you'll see. I put everybody that's written so far at the end of the chapter, and what you'll read is, okay, stupid. This isn't that hard. Stop making it sound so difficult. Observation for our time is the neck. You are the choder.
Okay.
Live with it. It's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Just go with the flow. That's kind of the approach.
Yeah.
It all started with Jackie.
Yeah. I know. It was, when she read it, I said, I need to weigh in on this because she's absolutely right. And her son was right.
Yes, I think she was right, too. And although they said it in the nicest possible way.
Yeah. Well, she is the most polite of persons.
She is the most polite. She is really polite. But
And she.
I read it as, okay, you're being pretty selfish here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I understand, but you ought not be so selfish. She didn't say it that way, but that's how I read it.
Yeah.
She was really serving as my nagging conscience that I had let slip. Oh well, I think it's still better we came to it this way.
Yes, sir. I do too. I'm glad you went to it because it's one of those things you toss out and everybody goes, "Oh, who's got this big head or something?"
I didn't want to build the case. I didn't want to build the case for it. And it only became possible when we really realized how just insignificant the Joder was. And then it becomes fun.
Yeah. So.
You have to have some self-effacing humor. It doesn't work. Yeah. So.
We'll have a safe trip. Be
all right,
careful.
yeah.
And,
a lot of flying.
I'll send you some stuff, and we'll go from there.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to actually go see the Last Jedi with my son, and it's going to be a mixed blessing because the fact my son just loves the Star Wars saga, and so it'll be fun to see it with him. And my wife will be happy enough to be there. She's not into science fiction at all, but she's seen all the others, and. My issue with it is that the Force, the light and dark side, and the opposing things and all that, it's built on Kabbalah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was written with a knowledge of Kabbalah, but it is Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is a really bad thing.
Yeah.
They preach it like
they probably
religion.
know. They know.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes science, because I know a science fiction writer. She wrote about 40 books and illustrated a bunch of them. And we've talked about this, and we've talked about the Star Wars thing. But she said that a lot of times they'll just be reading material they don't know anything about, just to get an idea for a plot and so forth. So I mean, they could have not known, but they may have stolen it right out of a book on Kabbalah, or just an article on it or something, just to get an idea, and then they go from there.
Yeah, it's like, for example, that show, number one drama on television has been for 15 years, called NCIS, the original NCIS.
I watched them for years.
The character that made that show was an Israeli Mossad agent.
Oh, yeah.
That butchered English slang and English turn of phrase. And
right.
My sons, both of which read Tea with Terror, says, "That's right out of your book." I mean, they absolutely took the character right out of Tea with Terror. Yeah, she was modeled right after a Tea with Terror character.
Oh.
And they just laughed and said, "The least they could have done is given you credit." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh well. That was the funniest part of Tea with Terror, is writing for that character. It was, in fact, that was a pure novel. It's so much fun to write a novel where you get into your heads of your characters and say what you think they would say and do what you think they would do and see where those characters take you through the story. It was a lot of fun. I loved writing Tea with Terror.
Well, that was a pretty epic part of your life there. Wow.
Yes, it was. I wrote Tea with Terror right after 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah, it led to Prophet of Doom. That followed In the Company of Good and Evil. It's been a lot of stuff. Been busy. All right.
Put your pencil down and go have fun.
Yeah, I got to go put my pencil down. I'm going to get to bed early so I can get started early tomorrow morning.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to shake this pole.
Yeah,
okay, my friend.
All right. Good night.
I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. It's been fun. Good night.
Bye-bye.